class. In today's lesson, we're going to go over the answers for application questions part 2. Before I start off, I want to quickly show you a table over here that might be helpful for some of you guys, because some of you guys are still struggling to generate an equation or a rule to summarize a particular circumstance given in the worded problem. So for instance, this table shows you what symbol you'll be using to help you write your equation. So if you, for instance, if you see the word is, then that would imply that is the equal sign over there. If it says the words like such as twice, for instance, that would therefore mean like double. So you have to multiply it by 2, okay? So going through the very first question, the car hire rate in H dollars is given by the function H is equal to 73D plus 60, where D is the number of days and the car is hired. If the hire change was, the hire charge was $4.25, for how many days was the car hired? So in this case over here, they've given us the charge rate, what the value of H. All you need to do is substitute 425 into the equation and therefore solve for D. So we'll subtract both sides by 60 and therefore divide both sides by 73. Hence, you're going to get an answer of 5. So therefore, your answer is going to be 5 days in this case over here. Question 2, very similar question. So in this case over here, they're giving you an equation to express the amount of cost for depending on how long you're calling for. So in this case, you're trying to find out the length of a call when the cost was $4.13. So we'll sub C is equal to 413 and solve for T. So subtract both sides by 0.39 and therefore divide both sides by 0.88. Hence T is going to equal to 4.25 minutes. Always make sure you're including units in your final answer. Question 3, a 90-liter tank full of water begins to leak at a rate of 1.5 liters per hour. So that's going to be your gradient over here, okay? And because it's leaking over here, because it's decreasing, therefore it's going to be a negative gradient in this case. If V liters is the volume of water in the tank after T hours, complete the following. So we're going to write a rule first. So V in this case is like your Y and T is going to be like your X. So therefore your equation is going to be V is equal to 90 because that's your initial amount. Minus 1.5 T. It's going to be minus because it's decreasing over time. You want to sketch the graph now. So in this case over here, all you need to do is solve for your y-intercept and your x-intercepts. We know the y-intercept is going to be 90 because that's your value of C. So we'll find out what our x-intercepts is by substituting V is equal to 0 and therefore rearranging to solve for T. So divide both sides by, that should be a negative over here, by negative 1.5. And if you do that, T is therefore going to equal to 60. So that's going to be our x-intercepts. All you need to do now is sketch our graph. So therefore, I'm going to use these scales. As I said, you can use whatever scales as you like when you're drawing, as long as you're just labeling them and being consistent. So therefore, this would be my final answer over here, okay? Make sure I have V and T labeling the axis as well. Now for part C, use your rule to find the volume of water after 5 hours. So we're trying to find out the volume. So we're substituting T is equal to 5. And if you do that, you should get an answer of 82.5 liters. And for the very last one, the time taken to completely empty the tank. So emptying the tank is when V is equal to 0. Essentially, you're trying to solve for your x-intercepts. And we've already done that in part B. So hence, your answer is going to be 60 hours. And make sure you're writing this as a worded statement, okay? Question 4 over here, very similar question. It costs Ahmed $1,600 to maintain and drive his car for 32,000 kilometers. Find the cost per kilometer. So in this case, you just go 32,000 divided by 1,600. Hence your gradient, which is the rate in this case over here, is going to be $20 per kilometer. Write a rule. So therefore, it's going to be C is equal to 20x, okay, where x is the amount of kilometers he drives. Now, in this case over here, for part C, it's a bit different because now you have to include the fees that he's paid at the beginning of the year when he bought his car, essentially. So it's going to be $1,200 for registration insurance. So therefore, your new equation would now look like this by taking in those fees into consideration. And now for part D, all you need to do is sketch it by finding the x and y intercepts. We know that y-intercept is going to be 1,200. So to solve for the x-intercepts, sub C is equal to 0 and rearrange. Hence, you're going to get an answer of negative 60. And therefore, this would be your graph over here. And as I said, you can choose whatever scale as you'd like, okay? For question 5 over here, The question reads for part A, what was the initial value of the car? That's going to be your C value in this case of it. So it's going to be 24,500 because that's the starting price. And as you can see, it depreciates, which is why it has a negative gradient. For part B, by how much did the car decrease in value each year? So that's essentially talking about the gradient. So it's going to be $3,500. Sketch the graph. So find y, x-intercepts. Y-intercept is 24,500. X-intercepts, in this case over here, is going to be when y is equal to 7. So in this case, your y is your x-intercept. So just don't get tripped up. Therefore, this is what my graph would now look like. For part D, what was the value of the car after 5 years? So substitute y or t, whatever it is, as 5 to solve for C. And if you do that, you should get an answer of 7,000. And for part E, it's asking you to essentially find the x-intercepts in this case, which is going to be 7 years since we solved it earlier for part C. For question 6 over here, Mary's watering can is initially filled with 2 liters of water. However, the watering can has a small hole and is leaking at a rate of 0.4 liters per minute. Okay, now this question over here is a bit more different and a bit more complex than the other example. For the first one, part A, again, it's a similar question where it's going to be decreasing. So you're going to have a negative gradient. So it's going to be 2 minus 0.4 t. Now, for part B, what volume of water remains after 90 seconds? The reason why I said it's a bit different because notice that they've given units in a different measurement because they've given you seconds here, but they give you minutes over here. So therefore, you have to convert this into minutes first. So therefore, I've converted 90 seconds to 1.5 by dividing by 60. And what we'll do now is we're going to substitute that into our equation to solve for V. Hence, you're going to get an answer of 1.4 liters. For part C, how long would it take for all waters to leak out? Essentially, you're trying to find your x-intercept, so sub V is equal to 0, and then just rearrange. Hence, your answer is going to be 5 minutes. Now, for part D, if Mary fills a can with 2 liters of water at her kitchen sink, what is the maximum amount of time she can take to get to her garden if she needs to at least 600 mils? Notice over here, they're giving you in a different unit, so make sure this is in liters as well. So once you do that, substitute V is equal to 0.6 and solve for T. Hence, you're going to get an answer of 3.5 minutes. For question 7 over here, you're using simultaneous equations to find out what is the admission fee and what is the rental fee. So you've got a clue over here. So you're going to need to write an equation for John in this case. So first, I'm going to define my variable. So let X be admission fee, let y is equal to rental fee. In this case over here, admission fee is like for the entry fee. So he's got for his 6 nephews. So it's going to be 6x plus 5y is equal to $32. And for Jonitas, if that's how you pronounce it, it's going to be 7x plus 5y. And now we're going to solve for x and y. In this case, it makes sense to use the elimination method, and we're going to be eliminating y. And to do so, we're going to be subtracting both the equations together. So let's subtract them. And this will cancel out the y's. This will give you negative x is equal to negative 3.25. Hence, x is equal to $3.25. So that's going to be your admission fee. To solve for our rental fee, we'll just substitute it back into one of the equations. I've decided to go with the first one. So if you do that, this would give you this equation here. Move the 19.50 to the other side and divide both sides by 5. Hence, you're going to get an answer of $2.50. Therefore, always finish off your answer as a written statement. For question 8 over here, you're using simultaneous equations. So let's define our variables. Let x be the cost of the thick shake. Let y be the cost of the fruit shake. And this over here gives you the first equation. So your vanilla shake, so it's going to be x equals, because that over here implies an equal sign, is 2 plus y in this case over here. Your next one is going to be 3x plus 5y is equal to $30. Now, in this case, it makes sense to use the substitution method. So I'm going to substitute x into the second equation. Hence, this is what it would get. Expand it out, collect the like terms, move 6 to the other side. And now divide both sides by 8, hence y is equal to 3. So fruit juice costs $3. Substitute it back into the first equation to find out the cost of the thick shake. Therefore, the thick shake costs $5. For question 9 over here, this is a bit more of a complex example. What you need to do is first you need to write an equation for each of these phone plans over here. So for the very first one, it will cost a base rate, initial amount of $45 plus an extra 10 cents for each text message you make. So therefore, our equation is going to be for the first one, C is equal to 0.10x plus 45. Whereas for the next one over here, it's not dependent on the amount of text messages. You can make as many as you like or as little as you like. So therefore, you won't actually have x as a variable. It's just going to be C is equal to 75 in this case. Now for part B, you're just basically substituting in to find out what is the cost when you make 200 text messages. So if you substitute that into the first one, it's going to be $65 for the first one, but for the second plan, because it doesn't depend on the cost, it's still going to be $75. So it's still going to be cheaper to go for the first plan if you make 200 text messages. And for part C, you're trying to find out what is the maximum number of text messages that you can make with plan 1 for it to be more cheaper than plan 2. So you're using simultaneous equations over here. So if you use simultaneous equations, just solve for x. You don't have to solve for the cost at all. X is going to equal to 300. So you have to make, at most, this means, since x is equal to 300, this means that when you make 300 text messages, the price of both plans are going to be the same. So therefore, you need to make at most 299 for it to be cheaper than plan 2. And I've got a graph over here just to show that. And if you've got really good vision, as you can see, the point of intersection is when x is equal to 300. This is an extension question over here. I don't really expect you guys to get this question at all because this is kind of beyond our current scope of the course. But if you can do this, what you need to do is you need to write an equation for each of these 3 clues over here. So let's first define our variables. So over here, I've written the equations and I want to number them as equation 1, 2, and 3. In order for you to work it out, what you need to do is you need to rearrange one of the equations so that you can substitute it into another equation to have 2 variables for you to actually work from. So I'll show you what I mean. So what I've done deliberately is I've actually rearranged the third equation. So now I've got z is equal to 109 minus y. By doing so, what I'll do is I'm going to substitute that equation now into equation 2. So if I do that, this is what equation 2 would now look like. And now, as you can see, equation 2 no longer has a z, it just has x and y's. Hence, we could therefore use the elimination method with equation 1 and 2 to solve for x or y, okay? So in this case, I'm going to decide to cancel out x. So I'm going to subtract equation 1 from equation 2, your new equation when you substituted this guy here into that. And therefore, this is what you should get. And hence, y is going to equal to 62. So this guy here is 62 kilos. Now I'm going to solve for x or y. What I'll do is I'm going to solve for y in this case by substituting y is equal to 62. And in doing so, you get a value of 47 kilos. And to find out what the first guy is, x, I'm going to substitute into the first equation over here. And in doing so, this would get me an answer of 53 kilos. This is the end of today's video. Hopefully it helped you. I'll see you guys again in the next video. Bye.